Hakeem Adeniji is going to be stepping in for Lyle Collins at right tackle, and we'll break down his film in addition to was the second half as bad as it looked on offense and what went right for the defense against the Patriots.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco, joined today by Mike at Bengals_Santagata to get into some film breakdown as the Bengals took on the Patriots and got out of Foxborough with a victory on Saturday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, bringing you coverage of your team every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So if you're new as the Bengals make this playoff push and hope to get the 1 seed, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit the follow button anywhere you get your podcasts, and join the first listen club as many Bengals fans are listening to Locked On Bengals as they gear up for this playoff run. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, which lets you realize your dream of being an NFL general manager. Visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store and get a 100% free boost to your franchise using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game. Mike, we're going to start today with Hakeem Adeniji, who played a lot of snaps against the Patriots, and it was a tough test. There's some really good players on that Patriots defensive front, especially at the edge, or at least Bill Belichick getting excellent production out of those edge guys, Dietrich Wise, Matthew Judon, and Joshua Uche. All those guys creating problems of their own. I'm not sure how much of Uche actually Adeniji saw based on alignment, but I know he saw his fair share of Judon, probably some of Wise. Not necessarily players of that caliber, although Gregory Rousseau with the Bills coming up this week is good, and that will be the matchup as Rousseau lines up exclusively over the right tackle or on the left side of the defense for the Bills. So overall, Mike, PFF says Hakeem Adeniji had 8 pass rush losses in addition to 1 pressure allowed. Joe Burrow was getting rid of the ball pretty quickly. It wasn't always the prettiest of pockets, although there were some really nice ones as well in this game. When you focused on Hakeem Adeniji, what stood out to you?
Yeah, the athleticism difference with him and Collins, I think, is pretty drastic. Just the flexibility and athleticism of Adeniji to get in there, and he just fires off the ball. He's a little bit too jittery with his feet and stuff, kind of makes like typewriter feet, although not in the great way that you want to hear that. But he moves really well. He moves out of his stance really well. He gets into his pass set quickly, and he's not overly experienced, but that is like the first thing when I watched him, just because you see Collins the entire time. And not that Collins is like insanely slow or anything out of his stance or anything like that, where he's like what people feared Orlando Brown might have been coming out of college or something like that. But just he is on the lower end. And then to see Adeniji, who's probably more above average athleticism, which on the Bengals offensive line is good because they're not huge athletes. That was interesting, and that was the first thing I noticed with him, although there are definitely not so good things as well. But start positive. There was the athleticism and firing out of his stance.
And you take some athleticism, right? But there is going to be a very different feel to the right side of that offensive line in the skill set differential between those guys, even if Lyle wasn't moving all that well, and he wasn't moving great. And, we talked a lot this year about the signature LC move to when he's beat around the edge, get that little diving push to buy Joe Burrow just a little bit of time, which was surprisingly effective at times, although a real desperation move and kind of ugly to watch on tape. There is a big difference in those guys in terms of how they move. And, LC hadn't had the greatest year of pass protection. The issues popped up for him for time to time. It wasn't constant, and he had his share of really good pass pro snaps as well. So let's start with pass pro, because I think the bigger difference maybe in the running game, I guess we'll see. Adeniji has a lot to prove, I think, in both of these regards, but at least on paper, to me, because Collins didn't have the great year of pass pro, do you think that there's a chance Adeniji at least can kind of be around the same level in terms of protection?
Yeah, it'll be different. I think La'el Collins usually got to the right spot. It was not super common, although it would happen, that he got beat immediately. Like he would get there, he would get his hands on the guy, and then whatever reason he just couldn't really hold that block, sustain that block. He would fall down or push or dive and push the guy rather than be able to just clamp him. If Adeniji gets into a position of advantage, like inside hand on the in the armpit, type of what are you talking about? Strikes his hands on the inside of the defender, or even the Willie Anderson club, one hand on the inside, one hand on the outside, riding him along the outside. He holds it. Like he did that against Matthew Judon. Like he's able to hold his position of advantage. He's able to, I'm in this position, you're not winning now. Whereas La'el Collins, he get into that position and then just whatever. I don't know what it is with his injuries, but he just kind of body would give out. So that's one of the positives of the difference in them in pass protection. One of the negatives is he does lose. He has immediate losses. There are plays where what the defender is trying to throw at him works, whatever it is. And that happened a few times this game. It could have just been he reacts too hard to an inside fake like he did once to Josh Uche. Matthew Judon just got him a time or two. He also doesn't have the rhythm of the snap down. It was a silent count. So this is the rhythm of center down, up, snap. Or sometimes they do down, snap as you go up, down, up, hold, snap type thing. They've got a few different ones just so the defense doesn't know. But you see Jonah Williams almost false start every time, and some people will call it a false start, but they're not calling it, so it's not a false start. If it's giving him advantage, it's not a false start as long as they're not calling it. So he fires out, and the last one out of his stance will be Adeniji at times. As awesome as he's exploding out of his stance, he's not getting there at the snap of the ball. Like it's a second, not a second, but a millisecond after the ball snapped. Everybody else is moving, and then he moves. And that's something that has to be cleared up. I think that's something that comes with time, though. If this is still an issue week one of the playoffs, I think that becomes a concern, like a long-term concern. But as of now, it's kind of just, okay, well, that could just be, he doesn't have this offense's snap count. It's a new center making the head moves. It's not Trey Hopkins anymore. And even when it was Trey Hopkins, I mean, he played a few games, but he wasn't his 17-game starter for that team last season. So there's a few differences there. Collins was usually on time with the snap count, and he would usually get into that position of advantage and then wouldn't hold it. Adeniji doesn't always get to the position of advantage, but when he gets there, he's able to hold it and pass protect for longer. Whatever you prefer, I I think it's up to whoever is the quarterback, really. Like, do I want to know my guy is probably going to lose at 2.5 seconds? Or do I want a guy, I don't know if he's going to lose at 1.5 seconds or if he's going to hold that for 4 seconds?
Yeah, it seems to me, and we'll see how it goes the next couple of weeks. This is something that I want to watch with Burrow. Seems like he's really comfortable with having a feel for when the pressure is going to come with the continuity they had on the offensive line. So we'll see how that affects things. With Adeniji last year, there was a lot of that instant loss or unblocked guys, communication issues. So that will be something to watch, as well as, Zach Taylor in his press conference on Tuesday was talking about, the job LC did communicating to the tight ends and to Alex Kappa as well. And so there will be some work for Adeniji there as well, but he's been in the system for a while now too. He's been around for a while. And so with a couple of games at home, hopefully the snap count stuff goes away. I think we need to talk about the run blocking as well, because Kappa and Collins had been really good this year at the power running game, the moving guys vertically stuff in particular. And when Collins got a full head of steam going, he was going to put guys on their butt. And he did that a few times throughout this year. So we'll come back to the offensive line here in just a second and then get into some of the other things the offense did well, because I thought Joe Burrow was, again, continues to play at just a really high level. So we'll get into that in a minute. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, a game that I've been playing with on my phone when I have a little bit of downtime. And if you've ever dreamed of being an NFL GM and hiring and firing coaches based on the schemes you like, the schemes that your players can run, trading players, gaming the system for all those extra draft picks like you've done in Madden, well, NFL Ultimate GM is the game for you. And right now, Locked On Bengals listeners will get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On. That's in all caps in the in-game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So you can check it out today for that boost. You can find it at ultimate-gm.com or in the App Store. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Before we dive into Joe Burrow and the rest of this offense, Mike, and they were so close to this not being an exciting finish, more exciting than we wanted it to be against the Patriots. If just one guy makes one more somewhat difficult catch, probably talking about a different game, and we'll get there. But before we do, really quickly want to finish on the Adeniji Collins stuff, where we've talked all year about what Collins brings as a run blocker, his ability to move people in the power game in particular. Adeniji, not quite as powerful, I would say. Am I right in that assessment? What do you think that will look like? Will they have to change the way they're calling this run game?
Almost missed my mute button. He's not as powerful. There's few guys that really are as powerful as Lalo Collins. Those double teams were awesome. They still ran that. They were really liking long trap, which is similar to power. You pull the guard, but you're going to kick out the end with the guard and let the double teams climb to the second level rather than have that guard pull a wrap around. He did a fine job. They weren't displacing that defender like when it was LC out there, but Kappa's good on those, and I think he's going to raise the floor of those double teams himself. The reason they were awesome was because both those guys were good on those. Now you've got a guy who's good on those and a guy who it's not his thing, but they come together, and that's going to create at least a solid level block for the most part, as long as they keep getting that communication down, getting hip to hip and hitting those guys square. But that game was the long trap game was still working. That's what I found interesting, was they were running it, and the explosive run play that Mixon had in this game came when LC was out. It came when it was Hakeem Adeniji over there. It was a 12 personnel shotgun long trap, and the heck of a block from the tight ends. Actually, it was Asi, I believe, made an awesome block on that and climbed to the second level. But that was with Adeniji, and Adeniji overtakes the block after Asi leaves, and he doesn't give up ground. He just, does his job. So I think it's still there. You may not get the I think you were afforded some not so great pooling kick out blocks when you had LC and Kappa. And I could think of a few instances, but if the guard isn't going to kick that guy out, but that double team moves the other guy way out of there, that's going to create a hole no matter what, as long as that guard doesn't lose. Let the guy cross his face and get into the hole. As long as he just holds his position, he wins. So you may not get those anymore, where you get a big sized hole, even though the guard doesn't kick a guy out very far. But I do think I think he has an okay baseline on these type of power runs. And he should, in theory, I don't think we saw enough for me to have a real strong opinion of him as a run blocking right tackle. But in theory, I think you should be able to see on these zone plays or other plays that ask him to get to that second level, he might be a little bit better in space. Can't say that it's for sure a thing, but I think in theory, with the athleticism that he has, that he should be able to get in space and make these blocks a little bit better. Although LC was always awesome on that crack toss, and giving him a little bit extra time with the toss and everything to get out in front and just mow people down. You're probably not going to see that with Adeniji, even though he can really run.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the run game in general. They've had a couple of down weeks against some pretty good defenses against the run in Tampa and in New England, and we'll see if they can get anything going this week. At some point, they should probably find a way to run the ball for more than 3 yards a carry. I think that would probably be good. Better than running the ball for 3 yards a carry is running the ball for more than 3 yards a carry. It didn't really matter because they were mostly getting what they wanted on offense anyway. And that was in the form of Joe Burrow throwing the ball well over 30 times in the first half and a whole lot more in the second half. And man, like I said, if Trent Irwin makes that catch or Jamar Chase makes one of two sort of tough catches on some really well thrown vertical balls from Joe Burrow, or T. Higgins makes a tough one-handed catch when he's probably being held in the corner of the end zone. Well, this game probably isn't very interesting down the stretch, and the Bengals don't need a miracle forced fumble to sneak out of Foxborough with a win. And then there's, the interceptions. I would say there's like 2 mistakes, maybe 3 mistakes Joe Burrow had in this game. And they all came on him kind of getting a little bit fooled by the defense. 2 of those were on the pick on the 3rd down. The one he just throws up to Jamar Chase where he's not on the same page. I think, it's a 0 look, and, not all on Burrow, but I don't know if he knew necessarily where the guys were coming from on that play. The very next 3rd down, there's another 0 look, and Burrow changes the play for a 0 look, and then he has to turf it because the Patriots drop out of it. So those 2, and then the one where Elsie gets hurt actually is another one where I think he thought he had something. He changes the play. The Patriots change their play in response, and Burrow has to turf it. Outside of that, incredible accuracy, incredible anticipation, really good timing in this game. Am I missing anything, Mike?
Dropping some dimes down the field. I mean, the Patriots were trying to take away those deep shots, 2 high coverages all day, and he was just putting that ball in between the safeties, in between the corner and the safety, just hitting these down the field hole shots that are, typically reserved for the higher echelon of quarterbacks to be able to hit consistently, and Burrow was hitting those. I mean, he hit Trent Irwin on a
incredible throw.
3 of those. Yeah, he hit 1 to the corner and then 2 down the seam, although Irwin didn't catch the one. And then he hits, should have hit Chase on another one. I don't know. I thought the Patriots were trying to take away that stuff, and Burrow just kind of said, like, well, you can't defend a perfectly thrown ball. And he would perfectly throw the ball.
There's also the 3rd and 17 to Chase, which is another perfect throw. There's another out to Chase where it's the ball's out as he's, reaching his break, like well before the break, as JT O'Sullivan would say, capital A anticipation on that throw. Joe Burrow's playing at an incredibly high level, and I know he has great receivers, and that is apparently the new thing for detractors, is that his receivers are helping him out. And sure,
not on Saturday,
but I mean, Higgins against Marcus Jones.
Yeah, Higgins did, but he got some drops and the receptions. That were
it wasn't perfect. Tyler Boyd, that's entirely on Tyler Boyd. The first interception, the Jason McCourty interception. You can see it. I tweeted the clip. The Joe Burrow reaction, the T. Higgins reaction. It's just one of those plays for TV where you don't expect that from him, and you don't expect it going forward. And I know Joe Burrow had words for Tyler on the sideline after that play. Not something I would worry about necessarily, but people are talking about this game. Some people, not many, are talking about this game as if it wasn't some sort of masterclass because his stat line isn't quite what it could have been. But Joe Burrow was excellent against the Patriots. Really good defense too.
Devin McCourty. I had to figure that I'm correct that eventually.
Did I say Jason?
Yeah, Jason's been retired a couple of years, I think.
My bad.
But the other thing that I was just going to mention is fun game for anybody who wants to watch the All-22 is whenever Burrow throws a ball to the sideline, outbreaking route, go back. Don't watch the receiver at all. Pause right when Burrow pulls the pin on the grenade and he takes his hand off and see where the receiver is, because he's never going to already have been broken. He throws with such good anticipation. Like any throw that's an out route, I can make a fun clip because it's like, I know he threw that with good anticipation because he has to too, because he doesn't have the Mahomes, Herbert, Allen arm, which isn't always a negative. It's that means that he has to be on time and do everything well. He can't be late. And he isn't. He isn't late. He makes the same throws. He's just throwing it with anticipation and early.
And it's incredible anticipation, incredible accuracy. Those outs to Chase on the 3rd and 17, and I don't even remember the down and distance. I think it was a 1st and 10 was the other one. It might have been a second, but really incredible stuff. The one to Irwin in the hole to Trent Irwin. This isn't Jamar Chase out there getting separation. I mean, and one of those was not at least one of them. Maybe both of those weren't too high for Chase that I was just talking about, but this one was just a beautiful hole shot. And if Burrow continues to play this way, he's playing like the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Over the last 7 weeks, I'd take him with any of these guys, even if he doesn't have the crazy power, arm, and spectacle of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts or whoever else you want to talk about. And so as long as they've got him playing a high level of football, this team can play with anybody. And the defense is playing pretty well too. Guys keep stepping up. We'll talk about some of those guys that stepped up here to finish up the show. This episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by Audible, who is releasing a slate of football podcasts we know you're going to love. And we're so confident that's why you're going to be able to find an episode from the league available as a bonus episode on Locked On NFL. It's going to be narrated by legendary Smack Talker Super Bowl champion Richard Sherman and sports broadcaster Taylor Rooks. The league is an 8-part docuseries about the most bizarre, inspirational, and unlikely stories connected to America's favorite sport, pro football. You won't want to miss these stories going from the 1940s, going way back all the way to the present. And the bonus episode you'll find on Locked On NFL, The Way of the Cowboy, the story of how the 1977 Dallas Cowboys brought in Bruce Lee's protege to teach their defense martial arts, which changed the way the league trained. Each story offers equal parts history, entertainment, and social commentary. You can find it again on Locked On NFL's stream right now, a bonus episode of the league, or catch a full series wherever you get your podcasts. Available now. Audible, get in the game. Defense, Mike. It's time. There's a whole half of the ball. We only have a third of the show to get there. I thought the young guys stepped up. I thought Cam Sample had a nice game. I thought Joseph Ossai had a nice game. Cam Taylor-Britt continues to be a rookie second round corner. Even Zach Carter, who we haven't talked about in a long time, not on the field as much with some guys healthy on that Bengals defensive front at this point, but he was making some plays too. Who stood out to you on defense? What stood out to you on defense? Because, I mean, the Patriots had nothing for the early part of this game. Just absolutely nothing until Kendrick Bourne decided that he wanted to play like Jamar Chase for about a quarter and a half.
Quite a few guys, I mean, stand out on defense. This is the unit that's been so consistent for this team, especially with Reader healthy. Obviously, Reader, he stands out every week. He did again this. He's the one who got there first on the forced fumble. You know, he's just that guy where he's going to make 5 oh my goodness type plays a game, I think. Yep. And, that's just something the offenses have to deal with. I do think Joseph Ossai, Cam Sample, Zach Carter, Cam Sample had a supercharged version of the game he usually has, although with more pass breakups where they target him a little bit, he gives some stuff up, but then late in the game, he's breaking that ball up. He makes another pass breakup and as the last play of the defense, he steps up when it matters. Can
I ask one question?
Okay. So
it seemed like to me, the Patriots were going after the Cam Taylor-Britt Von Bell battery, even when they were in split safety.
Yeah.
And they were thinking, oh, you're playing middle of field open, but we're throwing sideline anyway. Did that like 3 or 4 times it seemed like they thought you guys just can't get over the top. And they just tried to throw over the top of both of them?
Yeah, I can think of the Tyquan Thornton play. I believe that was a split field.
2 of them.
And then the last play of the game was a Kendrick Bourne throw, I believe. And that was also similar where they think that their guy can beat Cam Taylor-Britt, right or wrong.
And the Kendrick Bourne catch that was challenged and then ruled a catch after review.
Yeah. Well, that was an insane throw. But yes, it is the same thing. They're attacking the Cam Taylor-Britt Von Bell duo. So they think their guy can beat Cam Taylor-Britt, and then they think that, Von Bell doesn't have the range to get over the top. Right or wrong, they were right on some instances, and those guys made plays on other instances. So I do think that was their game plan. Attack those guys, which I don't know. If you are picking a guy and you trust your wide receivers, why wouldn't you attack a rookie corner? That is kind of where it is. And if you're going to attack a split field side, you're probably not going to attack the one with the rangy safety. So It makes sense when you think about it. The other thing I want to talk about on the defense is those blitzes worked. I don't know what it was about the pressure path, or maybe they just knew specific formation tells or something, but they got a free runner like 4 times, and they don't blitz often. So they got Von Bell on a couple of those. They got Mike Hilton in the run game once. It was just, it felt like the blitz stuff, which isn't always working for the Bengals, it worked in this instance. So I don't know if that's something that, it's something to watch, because like, can they get these blitzes to be more effective when Sam Hubbard's out? I also thought they stunted a tiny bit more than normal. And Cam Sample did a really good job on those. And so did Trey Hendrickson and, well, everybody. But I think of Cam Sample specifically because he got a really nice pressure on one of those. Yeah, I thought they had interesting plans for being down Sam Hubbard, to not just allow Trey Hendrickson with a broken wrist, just have their pass rush game plan be, go win, guy.
Yeah.
And he was still winning, which was awesome. I saw him use a swipe move, and I'm like, what's that? It's got to be some type of cortisone thing to be able to use a swipe with a broken hand, because that's got to hurt. Yeah. But he was hitting it. It worked on Trent Brown. I thought he had a good game. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting how the Bengals chose to create pressure, manufacture pressure, and it worked. So it's something to look for in the next game against the Bills. I haven't looked to see how their offensive line and Josh Allen does on these situations. And when the Bengals send pressure, they don't always just send pressure. It could be creepers. It could be 4-man rush with Von Bell coming off one side, but they also send zero and zone blitzes. So they kind of send all of that, but not that often. And will it stay at an increased level? Will it still be as effective? That's something that I think is one of the main things I'm looking for next week and into the week, however long Sam Hubbard's out. And can you keep using it with Hubbard out in the game, because it's still useful.
Yeah, and the third down package I actually liked. Cam Sample, BJ Hill inside with Joseph Osai and Trey Hendrickson outside. It was a pretty effective third down personnel grouping for them. Just talking about Josh Allen a little bit here, because you brought up the translation where you have a very static New England offense that doesn't really do a whole lot of play action, doesn't really have a dynamic player at quarterback. Very opposite in Josh Allen, who is, modern Brett Favre or modern athletic Ben Roethlisberger. And I say that in terms of, size, obviously for the Ben thing, but just like reckless abandon is the way Josh Allen plays a quarterback position. PFF has him charted at 29 turnover worthy plays this year against 41 big time throws, which I think is the most in both of those categories, which is
he's a gamer.
Very Brett Favrean, right? I mean, but this is where turnover worthy play stuff, and we talk about luck, right? With Joe Burrow, who had his first turnover worthy play in a while this week, which was a pick where he throws it up to Jamar Chase's side. Josh Allen has 29 turnover worthy plays this year, has 13 picks. Joe Burrow has, like, since week 3 anyway, you throw out week 1 and 2. And we talked about the stats yesterday, and I've got them on my timeline as well. The lowest turnover worthy play rate at quarterback, and yet he still has like 5 picks in that time. That's what we talk about when we talk about luck. Josh Allen is hitting defenders in the hands, and they're dropping the ball, and Joe Burrow is having passes deflected and picked. And anyway, going back to the point you were making about the blitz stuff, that is going to be really interesting. The PFF split, and I know they define blitzes a little bit weirdly sometimes, but they've got Josh Allen as being blitzed on 28% of his dropbacks. His yards per attempt, 2 yards lower than when he's not blitzed. And his completion percentage about 10% lower than when he's not blitzed.
I was surprised how effective Miami's blitzes were way early in the season. So I kind of made note of that in my mind. I was like, well, the Bengals just did all this blitzing. Can they use a little bit of that with Josh? I don't think they're going to do the whole let's line up in 30 times this game like they did to Lamar the one time. Yeah. But, it just as a wrinkle for it's a third down and 7. Let's just send some heat, or at least send a creeper or something, and maybe their line can't pick it up because they like to live in empty too, and it's just really hard to do from empty. That it was just something I watched it and I made note of because it was more effective than normal. And then can you translate that into the next week? Also, I think Josh Allen faces so many blitzes because think of those teams that are in the Dolphins, the Patriots like to blitz, even the Jets a little bit. They got some guys who like to send the heat and let Allen play that high variance game.
I'm just looking to see. He is blitz at like roughly an average rate.
Okay.
28%, right around the middle of the NFL. Nobody blitzes Joe Burrow by comparison. Joe
That must be
Burrow and
why I
Tom
was
Brady.
thinking 28% seems so high. And I was like, well, Burrow doesn't get blitzed anywhere near that.
Yeah, so guys like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Tom Brady don't get blitzed. Those guys, 22% Patrick Mahomes, 20% Burrow, and 19% Brady, rounding there a little bit. But a whole lot of the league is in like the 26 to 30% range. So not an extraordinary blitz rate for Allen, but it will be interesting. Big game for Logan Wilson. Seems like the Bengals like to use Logan Wilson as a spy, especially without Sam Hubbard. A lot of times when they drop 8, they would use Sam Hubbard as that spy. Feels like that job might be a little bit more of Logan Wilson's this week. And he's been good. The linebackers we talked about, and they've been good. This week was no exception. And another big task, right? I worry. The big thing that I worry about translating is that Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs can probably make you pay a little bit more if they catch Cam Taylor, Britt Von Bell on one side than Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne can. Even though Kendrick Bourne had an incredible second half. Really, really some impressive plays from him. Stephon Diggs is better. Josh Allen is better. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of looking at and thinking you try to prevent that from happening if you're the Bengals. Because they did switch sides for Cam Taylor Britt against the Patriots, which is kind of interesting too, right?
Yeah, I didn't really figure out why. I thought matchup at first, and I see the wide receivers going to both sides. I don't know. Maybe Eli. Well, Eli, no, that's Chidobe Awuzie's side on the other side. So I have no idea. Maybe Eli just wanted to try over there and get to the switch.
The one theory I saw was that because of the stinger, for whatever reason, that side might have been somewhat easier for him to play, but who knows? Like, that's so speculative. I have no idea. It was interesting though, and we'll see what happens this week. Maybe it's in preparation for Stephon Diggs or something.
They got to build up the numbers that the low paid film guys are doing for those teams. Like, well, he's normally a right corner, but we did find 30 snaps.
Yeah.
He's on the left side.
Recently they've been playing him on the other side. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. As always, we appreciate Mike joining us. You can find his work at All Bengals. You can find him on Twitter at Bengals_stands. You've got a podcast of your own, Mike. You've been doing all year with Lindsey Patterson. You can find that as well, because there's a lot of Bengals content out there. And as long as you're listening to Locked On Bengals first, you can go listen to Mike second. Just a little friendly competition there. Anyway, Mike, we always appreciate it. That's going to do it. Like I said, we're back tomorrow with Crossover Thursday, and it's early. So Crossover Thursday comes on the first day the Bengals will practice this week. Going to be a little bit different as it was last time the Bengals played on Monday Night Football, and the schedule will just be pushed, right? So Crossover Thursday still happens on Thursday, and then the preview will be coming on Sunday, and we'll find some other things to talk about as the Bengals continue to practice to wrap up the work week this week on Friday and head into the new year. So we appreciate all of you for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. And until next time, Hoo Day, and have a good one.